Hey, what's up, guys? Coach Tim Crater, and I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the instructor training we have coming up the last 2 weeks of June. So I'm sending out this email to kind of explain a couple things to everybody. I've been involved in martial arts since I was about 5 years old, and I've been teaching martial arts for the last a little over 15 years. Okay, and for many years I felt like I kind of knew what I was doing. And a lot of my education as being a martial arts instructor was taken from learning from my instructors and watching them and kind of pulling bits and pieces here and there, learning at seminars, trying to read books, and but a few years back I went to an instructor training program that revolutionized the way I looked at martial arts and the way I looked at teaching martial arts and the way I approached being an instructor. And since then, our academy has exploded from about 140 students at that time to a little bit below 400 now. And it's in large part because of the way that we teach, the way that our instructors are trained, and the way that we develop our students. And that is not something that I think should be secret from anybody. I think it's phenomenal things about personal development, about growth, about education, about inspiring and influencing others. And I think those things are things everyone who's ever interested in teaching martial arts or dance or anything where there's a personal interaction with another person. So I want to talk to you a couple minutes about a couple of the things that you're going to learn in your instructor training program. I want to talk about the stages of learning and how we at Gladiators Academy address the stages of learning with our programs. And these are some of the philosophy and some of the dynamic that you will be learning in the instructor training course. Again, it doesn't matter if you're a white belt, even if you're in high school, we encourage people to attend. We have a lot of young gun kids who I think would be great candidates to come and learn how we teach, so that as they continue to move forward, they can take the steps necessary to teach with us. In my opinion, teaching at Gladiators Academy has changed the lives of many of our instructors, and it's something I always want to offer. We only do this training twice a year. Attached to this email is the application. Please fill it out and get it back to the front desk, and we'd love to see you. I'll welcome you there. At the end of this video, there's a couple testimonials from some of the instructors we have here. Please watch those, and you're free to call the academy and leave a message for me if you have any questions. Okay, so let's get started first with stages of learning. So the first stage of learning is an unconscious incompetent. Wow, misspelled that. Unconscious incompetent. And I'll explain this a little bit too, because in our business, mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we have people sometimes who walk in and say, I'm here to sign up for the UFC or something, And sometimes some instructors or maybe students kind of giggle or laugh a little bit, but I don't really anymore. And the reason I don't is because I'm educated enough to understand where that thought process is coming from, right? The real person who's coming in's desire is to learn, develop, grow, and they don't necessarily know any other way but asking for the only type of training they know, which is the UFC, and how do I sign up for the UFC? What they really mean is, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to develop. But the reason that they think it's possible to just go ahead and sign up for the UFC the first day is because they're unconscious of their incompetence. They have no real idea of what it takes to be proficient at mixed martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, or any of those things. They've never had a hands-on experience with a professional, and they don't understand the levels of training and the levels of progression that go into becoming proficient at that. It's similar to anything, you know? Like, for instance, the game of pool. I watch pool on TV and it seems pretty simple to me. You have the pool stick and you take your pool stick and you hit the white ball, and the white ball hits the other balls, and you get them in the holes, and everything's simple, right? But that's because I'm an unconscious incompetent. Anybody who plays pool at any decent level will tell you that's crazy. There's so much more going on in pool than you could possibly imagine. There's so much to do with physics and angle and rotation and turn, and it's an unbelievable game that people play for years and years, just like chess and just like checkers. But to somebody who's not experienced that, you're an unconscious competent. So that's the first stage of learning. When you first are introduced to a new art, you're an unconscious incompetent. And the first stage we got to get you to is a conscious incompetent. What a conscious incompetent is you've been doing jiu-jitsu for a little bit, you know what the guard is, you know what the mount is, you know what cross chokes and arm bars are, you understand the basics of passing the guard, or if you're doing the MMA program, you understand basic punch combinations and kick combinations, you know how to hold pads, you understand the fundamentals of athletic training and strength training, you understand the fundamentals of wrestling and jiu-jitsu on the ground, but you're not necessarily competent enough to do those things live on another competent person. You are no longer unconscious of your incompetence. You are now conscious that you're not necessarily at the UFC level yet, right? You have, the veil has been pulled from your eyes, right? You have been awakened, or you have seen the light, I guess you would say. And that level of learning is very important, okay? Now, a lot of martial arts schools violate some of these things, and I'm going to explain that in a second. But before, let's go to our next stage of learning. So how do we get you from conscious and competent? What's the next stage? Once you know what you're doing, but you're not necessarily ready to start doing it full speed on anybody because you know what's going on, but you're not necessarily really capable of it yet in a live setting. So the next level we have is conscious competence. What conscious competence is you know what you're doing and you're capable of doing it. Okay? That's a person who you can see the mechanisms in their mind working when they're hitting pads. They're flowing and they're moving right and they're thinking about what they're doing and they're making the right decisions and they're slipping punches. And you can see the same thing on the ground or in a person's wrestling. There's a lot of focus, there's a lot of concentration, and there's a lot of intent in their face. And that is what we call conscious competent. I would range that level, the amateur and early pro level MMA fighter, the blue belt and early level purple belt or purple belt who's not been teaching, even brown belts who have not taught before, or what we would call the conscious competence, right? They know what they're doing, and there's a lot of thought that goes into their movements, and they're paying attention to everything they're doing, and they're very structured and focused, and you can see a lot going on in their head while they're training. Okay, and the final level of stages of learning is the unconscious competence. Okay. What unconscious competence is somebody who is extremely proficient and they're not really conscious of it. What I mean by that is they've done this for so long, they have dedicated so much of their life and their time to proficiency, and they have drilled something so many times that it is almost an unconscious reaction. They have rewired the neurons in their brain to fire in exact that direction every time some specific event happens, right? So if I'm boxing and the person throws the 1-2, it's my trained unconscious competence that takes a drop step and hook crosses. That's an unconscious competence that is a part of my being. Whenever I see a 1-2, I drop step and come back with a 3-2 right off the bat. Okay? That's something that is developed over years and years and years of training. But there are things that can help you get there before the years of training. Okay? And unconscious competence are people that we would consider our coaches, our teachers, people we bring in for seminars, people that we get to train with that radically change the way we train or what we do, because there's something about them that is extraordinary. Okay, those are people we call unconscious competence. So I want to go over a couple things that we use to how do we get students through these stages. Okay, and so first, when it comes to unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetent, how do we get a student from unconscious to competence? Well, it's easy. What we do is we provide them with knowledge. That's what bridges the gap from unconscious incompetence to conscious competence. It is knowledge. We teach them things. We put them in scenarios where they have to become conscious of what pressure is, what passing is, what the close guard is, how they work. Now, one thing that I feel like a lot of schools do, or a lot of martial arts schools do, is instead of giving students knowledge when they're unconscious incompetence, they instead try to build skill. And building skill to someone who is an unconscious incompetent is, in my opinion, detrimental, because it'll force those students to quit. Martial arts students quit when they get injured, number one, in the first 30 days, number two, and then after about a year and a half, number three, right? And there's reasons why they quit, right? And some of the reasons why I think injury happens is because at the time when a student is an unconscious incompetent, most schools are letting them roll full speed with other trained practitioners, spar full speed with other trained practitioners, and what happens is an unconscious competent gets hurt because they don't yet possess the knowledge they need and can't logically defend themselves without getting themselves hurt. And it takes a little time with your students to give them the knowledge they need so that you can start then, from this point on, taking that knowledge and building it into skills, and then mastery, right? So we take knowledge and we build it into skills, and then from those skills, we master those skills. Okay? But expecting a student to have the skills to defend themselves in live sparring situations their first week or 2 or 3 weeks is crazy. We do more specific training for our intro students. So to get our students from unconscious competence to conscious competence, we use our intro program. Okay, that's how we develop our students at that level. From our conscious incompetence to conscious competence, we use our journeyman program and our CAP program, and these start to introduce students into live sparring, live training, but they have the knowledge of why they're doing that, and that knowledge can help them develop more skills that will lead to less injuries and will inspire their training to continue for much longer than the average martial arts student. Okay, so these are how we kind of classify what I call, and what is also by science, the stages of learning. And based on these stages of learning is how we develop all of our students. Now, some of you may be asking, well, yeah, but how do you get from conscious competence to unconscious competence? How do you get there? And I'm going to give a couple ideas that I think are important, right? So, some things I think for conscious incompetence is live training, higher intensity, competition. I would say entry-level competition, like the local Louisiana Jiu-Jitsu tournaments, maybe USA Boxing. I think those are entry-level competitions and stuff like that. When it comes from conscious competence, once you have somebody who's good and thinking and paying attention, I think high-level competition puts a lot of pressure on the practitioner, forces them to cut weight, forces them to make adjustments and schedule out training sessions and invest more in what they're doing. And they start to become unconscious because much more time spent training, much more time spent focusing on their art, much more time spent training with other unconscious competence. That's another thing I think is exposure to other UCs. Right? Exposure to other UCs. We bring a lot of world champions and elite level practitioners from all over the world and the South over to our academy to train with our students and our instructors so that we have more exposure to other unconscious competence. And then the last thing I think is probably one of the most important is teaching and giving back. Like giving back with your time, private lessons, and teaching other students and trying to develop how you communicate your martial art to others. Those are the things I think take a person to an unconscious competence. Okay, and those are what we consider our stages of learning. So once we see a student get to this conscious competence, the next jump we use here is we make them instructors. If you look at my academy, all of my purple belts and most of my elite fighters, they're all teaching here and learning how to transmit the information they have to others and how to do that in a professional way, how to do that in a safe way, how to do that in an environment that is enough for professionals and competitors, but also it's enough for soccer mom trying to lose weight, have fun, and learn jiu-jitsu, because we have a lot of those here as well. So these are some of the concepts. As you can see, I'm a little bit crazy sometimes, but these are some of the concepts that we teach in our instructor training course. The instructor training course is about 40 hours of education, and we do it over 2 weekends. That's done at our academy here. It's a Saturday and Sunday. It starts the second to last weekend of June, and then the final weekend of June. We do about 8 hours of classroom work on each day. We also do some application work as well. And then when the course ends, what we do is we have a continuing education program so that in July we teach the first half of our BJJ Fundamentals course, and then in August we teach the second half of our BJJ Fundamentals course. And then in September we teach the first half of our MMA Foundations course. And then in October we teach the second half of our MMA Foundations course to all the instructors that came to the instructor training program. And the reason we do that is to further instill and teach and train the methodologies, the thought processes, the practicality of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because the majority of the instructor training that you're going to come to in June is how to teach. It is not what to teach. Many instructors are very worried about what they're teaching. And don't get me wrong, what you're teaching is very important. If you don't know what to teach, you have no business teaching in the first place. But to think that the what is the most important thing, in my opinion, makes you a less capable instructor. The how is much more important than the what. But after we give you the how in our instructor training program, we will then facilitate some of the what through our intro courses that we will teach all of the instructors over those next 4 months. So if you have any questions, please feel free to give us a call.